So there I was, casually driving past Stumptown Coffee on my way to pick up craft supplies, when I spotted my husband Conrad through the window, holding hands with a woman who definitely wasn't his mother, or his sister, or anyone I'd ever seen at our backyard BBQs. Funny thing about shock. Your brain does this weird thing where it processes everything in hyper detail, while simultaneously refusing to believe what you're seeing. I noticed her manicured nails, nude pink, professional, his body language, leaning forward, engaged, the way he smiled at her, the same dopey grin he gave me 11 years ago when he proposed at Multnomah Falls. I parked my Subaru out back, because of course I drive a Subaru in Portland, wouldn't want to break stereotype, and sat there for approximately 45 seconds having a full internal breakdown. Then I did what any rational woman would do. I walked into that coffee shop like I owned the place. Let me paint you a picture of my life before this Thursday afternoon apocalypse. I'm Linnea Barrett, 35, freelance graphic designer, mom to 2 incredible daughters, Zora, 8 and Willa, 5, and apparently a complete idiot for believing my husband's late nights at the office excuses for the past 6 months. We live in a charming craftsman in Selwood that we renovated together. Well, I picked all the paint colors and argued with contractors while Conrad worked. Portland in September is perfect. Golden light, crisp air, pumpkin spice, everything invading every coffee shop. It was supposed to be my favorite time of year. Instead, it became the day I learned my marriage was a lie. Conrad saw me when I was about 10 feet from their table. His face went through 5 distinct phases: confusion, recognition, terror, calculation, and finally settling on something between deer in headlights and man about to have a coronary. The woman, I'd learn her name was Mirabelle, because, of course, it was something elegant and romantic, turned to see what had stolen his attention. She had this perfect auburn hair, one of those expensive blazers from Nordstrom, and the kind of makeup that says, "I woke up like this," but definitely took 40 minutes. "Who's this?" she asked Conrad, not hostile, just genuinely confused. Like she'd found a stranger interrupting their moment. I beat him to the answer. I'm Linnea, his wife of 11 years, mother of his 2 daughters, and you must be the reason he's been working late every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months. 6 months? The number came out of my mouth before my brain fully processed it, but it was accurate. That's when everything changed. When he stopped making it to Zora's soccer games. When he stopped asking about my day. When he started buying cologne I'd never seen before. Some expensive nonsense from Sephora that definitely wasn't his usual Old Spice. Mirabelle's face drained of color. And I mean drained. She looked like someone who just realized she'd been filing her taxes wrong for a decade. Wait, wife? He said he was divorced, that you two had an amicable split 2 years ago. Oh, this was good. This was really good. Divorced? I actually laughed. It came out slightly unhinged, but whatever. Is that why he's still living in our house? Still sleeping in our bed? Still taking our daughters to school every morning when I have early client calls? Conrad tried to speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. No words came out. Probably because there were no words that could fix this spectacular dumpster fire. Mirabelle stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. Everyone in the coffee shop, and it was packed with the late afternoon crowd, turned to look. Portland loves its coffee shop drama. She grabbed her Kate Spade purse and stared at Conrad with pure, undiluted disgust. You told me you were ready for something serious, that your divorce freed you to finally commit to someone who understood you. Her voice was shaking. I broke up with someone decent for you, someone who actually wanted a future with me. She walked out. I should have followed her. Should have left Conrad sitting there with his overpriced pour-over and his lies. But I didn't. I sat down in the chair she'd abandoned, still warm, which was somehow the most offensive part of this entire situation, and looked at my husband. 11 years, I said quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that comes before a hurricane. 2 kids, a mortgage, joint tax returns, and you told her we were divorced 2 years ago? What I discovered over the next 72 hours was so much worse than a simple affair. Conrad wasn't just cheating. He was rehearsing a new life. He had an apartment leased under his name in the Pearl District, one of those modern high-rises with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick. Rent, $2,800 a month. He'd been siphoning money from our joint savings account, $500 here, $700 there. Business expenses, he'd told me whenever I questioned the withdrawals. Over 6 months, he'd moved approximately $18,000 into a separate account I didn't even know existed. And Mirabelle? She wasn't the first. There'd been another woman before her, a UX designer named Petra from his startup. They'd dated for 3 months until she found out about me through LinkedIn, where Conrad had forgotten to change his relationship status from married. Petra had messaged me on Facebook with everything: screenshots, photos, even a video of Conrad at some happy hour saying I was basically a roommate at this point, and that our marriage had been dead for years. Dead for years? Interesting, considering we'd had sex literally 4 days before Petra sent me those messages. Considering I'd planned his birthday party 6 weeks earlier, invited his entire team, made his favorite lemon cake from scratch, bought him that fancy mechanical keyboard he'd been eyeing for months. But here's what really got me: my daughters. Zora had seen Conrad with Mirabelle at Pioneer Place Mall 3 weeks ago when she was there with her friend's mom for a birthday shopping trip. She'd asked him about it. "Daddy, who was that lady you were with?" And he'd told her to keep it their little secret because it was a work friend and Mommy wouldn't understand. My 8-year-old daughter. He'd manipulated my 8-year-old into keeping his affair secret. That's when I stopped being sad and started getting strategic. I spent that Thursday night pretending everything was normal. Conrad came home at his usual 6:30 p.m., after spending quality time with his side piece, and I served dinner like a 1950s housewife having a psychotic break. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, the works. The girls chatted about their day. Willa showed us a drawing of our family. Painfully ironic timing. Conrad kept glancing at me, waiting for the explosion. I smiled through the entire meal. Didn't say a word about Stumptown Coffee. Didn't mention Mirabelle or Petra or his secret apartment, or the fact that our 8-year-old was carrying around his infidelity like a toxic secret. After tucking the girls into bed, reading Goodnight Moon to Willa while dying inside, I walked into our bedroom where Conrad was pretending to read some tech industry newsletter on his iPad. "So," I said conversationally, "how long were you planning to keep the Pearl District apartment before you officially left us?" He dropped the iPad. Actually dropped it. I heard the screen crack against our hardwood floor. Serves him right. That floor took us 3 weekends to refinish together 2 years ago. "Linnea, I can explain. Can you explain why our joint savings account is missing $18,000? His face did that thing guilty people's faces do. The micro expressions of someone calculating which lie might still work. Those were business investments. Try again. I called the bank. The transfers went to an account under only your name. Want to guess what else I found? I pulled up my phone, showing him the screenshots Petra had sent me months ago. Messages I'd ignored because I'd been in denial. Your ex-girlfriend Petra was very thorough. She documented everything, including the part where you told her I was basically dead weight, holding you back from your authentic life. Portland loves therapy speak. Everyone here has a therapist and uses words like authentic and emotional labor and toxic patterns. Conrad was fluent in that language. He'd used it to justify his affair to himself. Probably told Mirabelle he was finding his truth, or some similar garbage. "I never meant," he started. "You involved Zora." My voice came out flat. Cold. The kind of cold that comes from the gorge winds in January. "You made our daughter lie to me. She's 8. She asked you about seeing you with another woman and you told her to keep it secret." That one landed. I watched shame flicker across his face for approximately 2 seconds before the defensiveness kicked in. I didn't want to disrupt their lives until I figured things out. Until you figured things out. Until you figured things out. And there it was. The explosion he'd been waiting for. "You've been figuring things out for 6 months while I've been raising your children, managing your household, and apparently playing the role of unsuspecting wife in your little performance of man discovering himself. Here's what's hilarious about cheaters. They always think they're the first person to have an affair. like they've discovered some revolutionary concept. Conrad actually looked surprised that I was angry, like I was being unreasonable for not understanding his journey. The next morning, Friday, September 19th, I did what any rational Portland woman would do. I went to yoga, then called the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. Her name was Sienna Caldwell. She had a corner office in the U.S. Bancorp Tower with a view of Mount Hood and a reputation for making cheating spouses weep openly during depositions. Her consultation fee alone was $750. Worth every penny. So your husband has been conducting an affair, embezzling marital funds, and coercing your minor child into secrecy, Sienna said, taking notes on her iPad with a stylus that probably cost more than my car payment. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, but we can absolutely use this behavior to argue for favorable terms regarding custody, support, and asset division. She explained it all while I sat there drinking her fancy French press coffee, custody arrangements, parenting time, how his financial dissipation of marital assets would work in my favor, potential outcomes. Her words were clinical, but I could see the gleam in her eye. She loved cases like this. One more thing, I said before leaving. I want documentation of everything. Every lie he told his girlfriends about being divorced. Every dollar he moved. Every time he manipulated our daughters. I want it so thoroughly documented that he can't spin this into some mutual growing apart narrative. Sienna smiled. It was the smile of a shark spotting blood in the water. I'll have my investigator start immediately. Meanwhile, Conrad was spiraling. He'd moved into his Pearl District apartment, the one I wasn't supposed to know about, and was posting Instagram stories of finding peace in solitude with carefully staged photos of himself reading philosophy books on his balcony. Philosophy books. This man hadn't read anything except Reddit threads and tech blogs in our entire marriage. His mother called me that weekend. Barbara Barrett, who'd once told me at our wedding that I was exactly the stable influence Conrad needed, now wanted to have a chat about what Conrad told her. He said you two had been having problems for years, Barbara said over the phone, her voice dripping with that particular brand of mother-in-law concern that really means, I believe my son's version of events exclusively. Barbara, did Conrad mention that he's been having affairs? Plural? Or that he's been stealing from our savings account? Or that he manipulated Zora into keeping secrets? Silence. Beautiful, awkward silence. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding, she tried. No misunderstanding. Your son is a documented liar and cheat. I have screenshots, bank records, and witness testimonies from his ex-girlfriends. But sure, let's focus on how I'm not being understanding enough of his needs. I hung up. First time in 11 years I'd hung up on Barbara Barrett. It felt amazing. By Monday, September 22nd, word had spread through our social circle. Portland's a small town pretending to be a city. Everyone knows everyone through some chain of coffee shops, yoga studios, or kids' schools. Mirabelle had apparently told her friends, who told their friends, who told our mutual acquaintances, about the psycho married guy who lied about being divorced. Conrad's reputation was becoming a train wreck in real time. His startup bros started avoiding him at networking events. Someone left him off the invite list for the annual Columbia River Gorge hiking trip. Even his favorite bartender at Teardrop Lounge gave him side-eye. But here's what really got him. Zora stopped talking to him. My 8-year-old daughter, who'd worshipped her father, who'd been his little shadow every weekend, refused to FaceTime him. When he came for his first parenting time visit after moving out, she stayed in her room and wouldn't come out. Why did you make me lie to Mommy? She asked through her closed door. My friend Emma's parents got divorced, and her dad didn't make her lie. You said it was our secret. Secrets aren't supposed to make you feel bad. Conrad sat in our living room. Well, my living room now, looking like someone had punched him in the soul. He'd never considered that his actions had consequences beyond just me finding out. He'd never thought about how his manipulation would affect his daughter's ability to trust him. I think you should leave, I told him calmly. Your visit time doesn't mean much if your daughter won't see you. He left, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than rage or heartbreak. I felt powerful. The real plot twist came on a Wednesday morning in early October, October 8th to be exact. I was at my desk working on a logo design for a local brewery when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Linnea. This is Mirabelle. I know this is weird, but can we talk? I have information you need to see." My first instinct was to delete it. My second instinct was to screenshot it and send it to Sienna. My third instinct, the one I actually followed, was to respond with Stumptown Coffee 2 p.m. Full circle, baby. Mirabelle showed up looking significantly less polished than the first time I'd seen her. No perfect makeup, no power blazer, just jeans, a hoodie, and the face of someone who'd been crying recently. She sat down across from me with a manila folder that looked ominous. "I'm not here to apologize," she started. "I mean, I am sorry, but that's not why I asked to meet." "Then why?" She slid the folder across the table. "Because Conrad's not who either of us thought he was. And you deserve to know before your divorce proceedings get messy." Inside the folder, bank statements showing Conrad had 3 separate accounts I didn't know about. Not just the one I'd discovered. 3. Total amount squirreled away. $47,000. Nearly $50,000 of our marital assets, moved systematically over 18 months. But that wasn't even the worst part. "He told me he was going to propose," Mirabelle said quietly. "He'd been looking at rings. Showed me photos from a jeweler in the Pearl. Said once his divorce was finalized, he wanted to start fresh with me. Build the life he'd always wanted." I stared at her. "You're telling me he was planning to marry you while still married to me? Using money he stole from our joint accounts?" "It gets worse." She pulled out printed screenshots. "I went through his laptop after I found out about you. I know, invasion of privacy, whatever. He has a whole folder labeled exit strategy. Legal documents about custody, asset division, even a draft email to his boss about relocating to Seattle. He's been planning this for over a year, Linnea. You weren't an obstacle he was trying to navigate around. You were a resource he was actively draining before he left." The coffee shop noise faded into white noise. Over a year. While I'd been planning our anniversary trip to Cannon Beach. While I'd been supporting his startup stress. While I'd been handling midnight feedings when Willa had the flu and every school pickup and every single invisible task that keeps a household running. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Mirabelle's jaw tightened. "Because he did the same thing to me that he did to you. He used me. Lied to me. Made me complicit in hurting someone else. And when I confronted him yesterday about the divorce that apparently never happened, you know what he said?" Her voice cracked. "He said I was too demanding and that he needed space to figure things out. The exact same line he probably gave you." She wasn't wrong. "Plus," Mirabelle added, "I found something else. He's been talking to a third woman. Someone named Delphine from his cycling group. Has been for at least 2 months, even while he was with me." I actually laughed. The audacity was almost impressive. Conrad had been juggling 3 women like he was training for Cirque du Soleil, all while playing devoted father on his Instagram stories. "Thank you," I said finally. "Seriously, this..." I tapped the folder. "This changes everything." Mirabelle nodded and stood to leave. Then she paused. "For what it's worth, your daughters are lucky to have you. He talked about them sometimes, but always like they were accessories to his life, not people he was responsible for." I should have seen it as a red flag. After she left, I sat there for 20 minutes, absorbing everything. Then I called Sienna. "How fast can you file for emergency custody modification?" I asked. "If you have documentation of financial abuse and evidence he's planning to relocate without notifying you." "Very fast." "Why?" I told her everything. The 3 accounts. The Seattle plans. The pattern of serial affairs. The manipulation of our daughter. "I'll have papers filed by Friday," Sienna said, and I could hear her typing furiously. "We're also going to motion for forensic accounting. If he's hidden $47,000, there might be more. And Linnea? This exit strategy folder. That shows premeditation. Systematic dissipation of marital assets. The judge is going to bury him." The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in strategic warfare. Sienna brought in a forensic accountant named Malcolm, who looked like a librarian, but had the soul of an IRS auditor. Malcolm found everything. Turns out Conrad had been underreporting his income on our joint tax returns, filed separately through his startup to hide contractor payments, moving money into a cryptocurrency wallet, another $12,000, paying for his girlfriend's expenses using our joint credit card, then categorizing them as business meals and client entertainment. Renting the Pearl District apartment under an LLC he'd created without telling me total marital funds misappropriated, approximately $73,000. In Oregon, that's not just infidelity. That's financial fraud during marriage. And judges hate that. But I wasn't done. I reached out to Petra, Conrad's first side piece. She agreed to provide a deposition about Conrad's pattern of lying about his marital status. Then I did something that felt slightly evil but absolutely necessary. I joined his cycling group. Not to confront Delphine, I'm not that messy, but to observe. And sure enough, there she was. Late 20s, yoga instructor type, hanging all over Conrad during water breaks. When she posted an Instagram story of morning rides with this amazing human and tagged Conrad, I screenshot it. Evidence of ongoing affairs during divorce proceedings? Sienna was practically gleeful. Most divorces are civil, boring paperwork, she told me during one of our strategy sessions. This is why I went to law school. I also did something I'd been avoiding. I told Zora and Willa an age-appropriate version of the truth. Not the gory details, but enough. Daddy made some choices that weren't honest. I explained one evening while we were making Halloween decorations. It was mid-October, and Willa wanted to be a unicorn. And those choices hurt our family. That's why he doesn't live here anymore. Is it because of the lady at the mall? Zora asked quietly. My heart broke a little. That's part of it, honey. But it's more about Daddy not being truthful with us. And that's not okay, even for grown-ups. Willa, my 5-year-old philosopher, looked up from her glitter glue. Is Daddy in timeout? Sort of, I said. A really long timeout. By October 23rd, I had a forensic accounting report showing $73,000 in dissipated assets, depositions from 2 ex-girlfriends, evidence of ongoing affairs, documentation of parental manipulation, proof of planned relocation without custody notification, and a lawyer who was sharpening her knives for trial. Conrad's attorney, some buddy of his from college who specialized in tech startups, not family law, was already sending settlement offers. They wanted to negotiate, wanted to keep this amicable. Sienna texted me, "They're scared. Good. Let them sweat until the hearing." The preliminary hearing was set for November 14th. In the meantime, I focused on something I'd neglected for years. Myself. Started taking the girls to Saturday market. Reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage. Joined a book club that met at Powell's. Hired a financial advisor to help me understand our assets and plan for single-income life. And I started dating. Not seriously, just coffee dates, casual walks, reminding myself what it felt like to have someone actually interested in what I had to say. One guy, a teacher named Barrett, ironic I know, from Willa's school, was particularly sweet. He'd been divorced 3 years earlier and understood the chaos of single parenting. "You seem different than when I met you at back-to-school night," Barrett said during one of our coffee dates. "More present? That's what happens when you stop living someone else's lie," I told him. When Conrad found out I was seeing someone, because Portland's basically a small town, and someone saw us at a food cart pod in Hawthorne, he lost his mind. Started texting me about moving on too fast and confusing the children. The irony was chef's kiss. "You're concerned about confusing them?" I texted back. "That's rich coming from the man who's been with 3 different women in the past year." He didn't respond. What could he say? As November approached, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not naive hope, but the grounded kind that comes from knowing you've done everything right, documented everything, protected your children, built a case so airtight that even the most mediocre judge would see the truth. Conrad had spent 18 months planning his exit strategy. I'd spent 6 weeks planning his reckoning. The preliminary hearing on November 14th was supposed to be routine, a formality where both sides present their initial positions, The judge sets some temporary orders, and everyone goes home to prepare for the real trial. Conrad's attorney, his college buddy Todd, who looked like he'd walked straight out of a craft brewery commercial with his man bun and vintage flannel, seemed confident. He kept whispering to Conrad, probably reassuring him that it's just a preliminary hearing, and the real work happens in mediation. They had no idea what was coming. Sienna stood up in her perfectly tailored black suit and addressed Judge Patricia Winters, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s known for having exactly zero patience for financial shenanigans. Your Honor, this isn't a typical dissolution case. What we have here is systematic financial fraud, parental manipulation, and a documented pattern of deception spanning 18 months. I'd like to submit our forensic accounting report, witness depositions, and evidence of ongoing misconduct during these proceedings. She handed the bailiff a binder that must have been 3 inches thick. Conrad's face went pale. Todd's man bun seemed to deflate. Judge Winters spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents. 20 silent, excruciating minutes where you could hear every cough, every shuffle, every nervous breath in that courtroom. I watched Conrad squirm in his seat, watched him whisper frantically to Todd, watched the realization dawn on his face that he was absolutely screwed. Mr. Barrett, Judge Winters finally said, looking at Conrad over her reading glasses, it says here you've dissipated approximately $73,000 of marital assets, created an LLC without your spouse's knowledge, underreported income on joint tax returns, and— She paused, flipping a page. Coerced your 8-year-old daughter into maintaining secrecy about an extramarital affair. Conrad opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Todd tried to jump in. Your Honor, my client acknowledges some financial irregularities, but— Some irregularities? Judge Winters cut him off. Counselor, your client committed fraud against his spouse, against the IRS, and against the integrity of this court by attempting to hide assets during dissolution proceedings. She looked back at Conrad. Do you have the $73,000 available to return to the marital estate? Silence. Mr. Barrett, I asked you a question. Some of it is— invested, Conrad mumbled. In crypto. And the market's been volatile. So you gambled away marital funds? Judge Winters was not amused. Here's what's going to happen. Temporary order. Mrs. Barrett retains sole possession of the marital home. Mr. Barrett will pay temporary spousal support of $3,000 per month and child support calculated at the presumptive amount for 2 minor children. Parenting time will be supervised pending a psychological evaluation to address the documented parental manipulation. Todd shot to his feet. Your Honor, that's excessive. Counselor, your client manipulated his 8-year-old into keeping secrets about his affair. He's lucky I'm not ordering a full custody evaluation immediately. Sit down. Todd sat. Furthermore, Judge Winters continued, Mr. Barrett will provide full accounting of all financial assets, including cryptocurrency holdings, within 14 days. Failure to comply will result in sanctions. This court will also be referring this matter to the Oregon Department of Revenue for review of the tax irregularities noted in the forensic report. I tried not to smile. Really tried. Sienna squeezed my hand under the table. Anything else, Ms. Caldwell? Judge Winters asked. Just one thing, Your Honor. We'd like to request that Mr. Barrett be ordered to maintain his current employment and notify the court of any plans to relocate, given the documented exit strategy involving moving to Seattle. Granted, Mr. Barrett, you are not to relocate more than 50 miles from your current residence without court approval. Next hearing date will be January 22nd for a full evidentiary hearing. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. Conrad looked like he'd been hit by a truck. A very expensive, legally binding truck. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Todd tried damage control. We can appeal the temporary orders. With what money? Conrad snapped at him. You said this would be simple. You said she wouldn't have evidence. I said a typical dissolution would be, I'm paying you $400 an hour to lose? I walked past them with Sienna, not saying a word. Didn't need to. My silence was more devastating than anything I could have said. The fallout was spectacular. Within 24 hours of the hearing, Conrad's startup asked him to step back from his role. Translation: They didn't want to be associated with someone under IRS investigation. His salary went from $140K to unemployment. His cycling group booted him after Delphine found out about the hearing details through the Portland gossip mill. She posted a long Instagram story about recognizing red flags and trusting your intuition about toxic people. Subtle. His mother, Barbara, called me. Actually called to apologize. I didn't know the extent of what he'd done, she said, voice shaking. The way he treated Zora. I'm so sorry, Linnea. Can I still see my granddaughters? Of course, I told her. They're not pawns. Unlike what your son made them. The $3,000 monthly spousal support plus child support meant Conrad had to move out of his fancy Pearl District apartment into a studio in Gresham, Portland's less glamorous neighbor. His Instagram stories of finding peace turned into radio silence. But the real karma came from an unexpected source. His startup's CFO, who'd been reviewing company finances after Conrad's exit, and found that Conrad had been expensing personal charges to the company card, hotel rooms for his affairs, dinners with his girlfriends, even the jewelry he'd been planning to give Mirabelle, all charged as business development expenses. They filed a lawsuit against him for approximately $30,000 in fraudulent expenses. His former employer was suing him while he was going through a divorce where he owed $73,000 in dissipated assets. Sienna actually laughed when I told her. He's being attacked from all sides. The court, the IRS, his employer, and his own terrible decisions. It's beautiful. The supervised visitation with Zora and Willow was painful to watch. A court-appointed supervisor named Margaret sat in our living room while Conrad tried to act like everything was normal. But Zora wasn't having it. Why did you lie? She asked him directly during the second visit. Ms. Margaret said this is a safe space to talk about feelings. So why did you lie to me and Mommy? Conrad looked at Margaret, at me standing in the kitchen doorway, then back at his daughter. I made mistakes, sweetheart. Grown-ups make mistakes sometimes. But you made me lie too, Zora interrupted. You said it was our secret. But secrets aren't supposed to hurt people. Out of the mouths of babes. Margaret was taking notes. I could see Conrad's parenting time getting more restricted in real time. Willa, my 5-year-old chaos agent, was less confrontational but equally devastating. She simply treated him like a stranger. Polite, but distant. Thank you for the juice box. Can I go play now? By Thanksgiving, which Conrad spent alone in his Gresham studio while the girls and I had dinner at Barbara's house with my parents, the transformation was complete. The man who'd spent 18 months planning his perfect escape had lost. His job, $140K salary. His reputation, social and professional. His relationship with his daughters, supervised visits only. His financial security, owing $73K plus legal fees plus company lawsuit. His future plans, Seattle relocation blocked, couldn't afford to move anyway. His mother's unconditional support. Barbara was firmly Team Linnea now. Meanwhile, my life was good, better than good. I'd picked up 3 new design clients through referrals. Barrett and I were officially dating. Nothing serious yet. But the girls liked him, which mattered more than anything. Zora was back in therapy processing everything. But she was smiling again. Willa was obsessed with her unicorn costume from Halloween and wore it randomly throughout November. The house felt lighter without Conrad's energy in it. I'd repainted our bedroom. His choice of sophisticated gray became my choice of actual color with personality. Bought plants, played music loudly, let the girls have dance parties in the living room. One evening in early December, December 4th specifically, I was making hot chocolate for the girls when I got a text from Mirabelle. Saw Conrad at Trader Joe's. He pretended not to see me, looked rough. How are you doing? I sent back, thriving. Thank you for the evidence. Changed everything. Good. You deserved better. Also, I'm in therapy now. Working on why I ignored red flags. Growth, right? Growth, I agreed. The January 22nd hearing was in 6 weeks. Sienna was confident we'd get everything we wanted. Full custody, the house, significant asset division in my favor, continued support payments. and enough documented evidence that Conrad would never be able to spin this into a mutual dissolution story. But honestly, I'd already won. The hearing was just paperwork. I'd won the moment I stopped being scared and started being strategic. The moment I chose documentation over drama. The moment I realized that the best revenge isn't rage. It's living well while your ex implodes under the weight of his own terrible choices. Conrad had planned his exit strategy for 18 months. I'd executed mine in 6 weeks. And mine actually worked. The January 22nd hearing was anticlimactic in the best possible way. Conrad's new attorney, Todd, had apparently conflicted out after realizing he was in over his head, negotiated a settlement before we even entered the courtroom. I got the house, full equity, approximately $380,000, primary custody with Conrad having supervised visitation every other weekend, 70% of retirement accounts, full reimbursement of the $73,000 in dissipated assets, payable over 5 years because he was broke, continued spousal support for 4 years, and child support until both girls turned 18. Conrad got his clothes, his bike, his cryptocurrency portfolio, currently worth about $3,000 after the market crashed, and the legal bills from 3 different attorneys. "Sign here," his new lawyer said, pointing to the settlement agreement with the enthusiasm of someone who just wanted this circus to end. Conrad signed. His hand was shaking. We walked out of that courthouse on a cold January afternoon, January 22nd, gray skies, the kind of Portland winter day that makes you crave coffee and fireplaces, and I felt nothing toward him. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just the blank neutrality you feel toward a stranger who once occupied space in your life. "Linnea," Conrad called after me in the parking lot. I turned. Sienna tensed beside me, ready to intervene, but I nodded that it was okay. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but—" "You're right," I interrupted. "It doesn't. But therapy might help you figure out why you blew up your entire life for— what exactly? A fantasy? An ego boost? The thrill of getting away with something?" He didn't have an answer. Of course he didn't. "Your daughters are amazing humans," I continued. "And eventually, when you've done enough work on yourself, maybe they'll let you back into their lives in a meaningful way. But that's their choice to make, not yours to demand. You lost the right to demand anything from them the moment you made Zora your accomplice." I walked to my car, didn't look back. That chapter was closed, signed, and filed with the Multnomah County Court. By March, life had settled into a new normal that felt suspiciously like happiness. Zora made the honor roll. Willa lost her first tooth and left a note for the tooth fairy that said, "Can I have $5? Inflation is real." Barrett and I were taking things slow. Dinner dates, weekend hikes with the girls, the occasional overnight when they were at Barbara's house. Nothing rushed, nothing performative, just easy. I ran into Mirabelle one Saturday at the farmer's market. She was with someone new, a woman with kind eyes and paint-stained hands. "Linnea!" Mirabelle smiled genuinely. "This is Astrid. She's an artist. We met at a gallery opening." "Nice to meet you," I said. "You two look happy." "We are," Mirabelle said. Then quieter. "Thank you for not hating me forever. I know I was complicit in hurting you, even if I didn't know it at the time. You gave me the evidence that won my case," I reminded her. "And you did the hard work of recognizing you'd been manipulated too. That takes courage." After they left, Willa tugged my hand. "Was that the lady Daddy lied to?" "One of them, yes. She seems nice now," Willa said matter-of-factly. "People can be wrong and then be better." 5-year-old philosophy. Straight to the heart. Conrad eventually got his supervised visitation lifted to unsupervised, after 6 months of therapy and a custody evaluator's recommendation. He was trying, I'll give him that. Showed up on time. Stopped making promises he couldn't keep. Treated the girls like humans instead of accessories. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. He'd also gotten a new job. Not the 6-figure startup dream, but a decent position at a mid-sized tech company in Beaverton. Moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Teagard. Joined a men's therapy group called Healing After Infidelity. From the cheater's perspective, naturally. Started taking antidepressants. Stopped posting on Instagram entirely. Good for him, I guess. Personal growth is personal growth, even when it comes after you've scorched the earth. As for me, I'm thriving in ways I didn't know were possible when I was married. Launched a design collective with 3 other Portland creatives. We're doing branding for local businesses, and it's actually profitable. Started taking the girls on weekend adventures, coast trips, mountain hikes, that weird alpaca farm in Scappoose they're obsessed with. Barrett proposed in June. Nothing fancy, just him and me and the girls on a hike to Punchbowl Falls. Zora cried happy tears. Willa asked if she could be a flower unicorn at the wedding instead of a flower girl. We're getting married next spring in a small ceremony that's about us, not performance. Sometimes I think about that Thursday afternoon in September when I drove past Stumptown Coffee and saw Conrad with Mirabelle. How that single moment detonated my entire life. But here's the thing. It didn't destroy me. It freed me. Freed me from a marriage where I was invisible. From a partner who saw me as a resource instead of a person. From the exhausting performance of pretending everything was fine when it absolutely wasn't. I'm not grateful for what Conrad did. Let's be clear, he's still a selfish ass who caused tremendous pain to everyone who loved him. But I am grateful for what I discovered about myself in the aftermath. That I'm stronger than I thought, smarter than I gave myself credit for, and absolutely capable of building a beautiful life from the wreckage of someone else's betrayal. Zora asked me recently if I was happy. We were making pancakes on a Sunday morning. Barrett was reading the paper. Willa was singing to her stuffed unicorn collection. Yeah, baby, I told her. I really am. Good, she said seriously. You deserve good things, Mom. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Last thing I'll say. If you're reading this and recognizing pieces of your own story, the partner who's working late, the gut feeling you keep ignoring, the 1,000 tiny betrayals you're explaining away, trust yourself. Document everything. Get a good lawyer. And remember that the best revenge isn't rage. It's living so well that your ex's choices become their problem, not yours. Lesson learned. You can spend 18 months planning the perfect exit, but karma only needs 6 weeks to fact-check your entire life, especially when you underestimate the woman you married.